Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the TreeCoin podcast. I'm Damian here, CEO and co-founder. I'm also joined by Samuel Dawes, the CEO of Australian Carbon Code of Conduct.
Perfect.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we've been in discussions for a while and you're a busy man and lots of moving parts. So it's essentially great that we've finally landed here to have a conversation.
It's perfect. It's great to be here and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's, I guess, a meeting of minds and missions, really, at what this is about. For me, the TreeCoin mission to help generate wealth while reforesting the world is something that's going to be very much in the public eye and needs to bring the masses with its mission. So integrity and trust need to be a given, but we've got to build it, and we're a newcomer relatively to this established space that you've seen evolve for quite a few years, and members of your organization like ourselves as signatories of the Code of Conduct, which is part of how we establishing our credibility and our transparency. But maybe just share a bit about your background, like where did you come from? How did you land into this role?
Yeah, most definitely. I think a very interesting journey to how I got to Melbourne. So I originally grew up in far north Queensland. And I had a beautiful property about 100 kilometres south of Townsville. And something that really stood out to me as a child was I lived beside a national park. And it's a beautiful national park. And I guess growing up, I saw that park change. I saw more fires. I saw more droughts. And even as a young child, I kind of realised, well, I think the climate's changing or the space around me is changing. And I think as I got a bit older, my parents are professors, had the opportunity to travel the world. And I noticed how climate change is impacting less fortunate communities. So, in Australia, we're pretty lucky if there's a fire or a flood, our government can often respond. But in the countries I was visiting, that really didn't happen. The people had to pick up the pieces and go again the best of their ability. And so I think what happened was I always wanted to be a detective. My parents talked me out of that. I ended up at law school, which is not too dissimilar to joining the police force at that point in time. And from that, I really discovered a passion for the environment, and I discovered a passion for regulatory enforcement. So I think my first job, it was some of the most exciting times of my life, was actually as an investigator for the Queensland government. So I travelled the state of Queensland investigating environmental offences. And what I really learned was the impact of environmental crime, particularly on local communities. And I think that just really drove my passion to, well, I can make a difference here. I think I have somewhat of a skill set to help. And it actually led me all the way to being with the code down in Melbourne. So I think a bit of a journey, as they say, the lattice work of finding why or your why and what you want to do in your role. But I saw a unique opportunity with the code. So we're currently up to version 2 of the code. I think it's been really fit for purpose since its inception in 2018 and when it became operational in 2021. And I was given this unique opportunity to join over time the Carbon Market Institute. And they said, look, can you have a look at the code? Can you see if it's still fit for purpose in our market? And can you have a look at what you can do with the code and how it can better support the market? And so it's been, a journey, I'll call it.
Yeah, well, significant role. I love what you said about investigating for the environment. So the premise that environment has rights, and that there are laws to protect those rights, and violation of those laws and rights requires action. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it was just a fascinating time. I got given an election commitment to look at protecting koala habitat in southeast Queensland. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, talking to landholders and community members, the narrative changed. It became less of, we have to protect the environment, it's going to slow our economy, and more of a question about, well, me as a landholder, how can I help support the environment? Because I can see that the environment around me is supporting me.
Yeah.
So it's just great to see that community perception change over a short period of time.
Well, it's actually interesting echoes of some other teachings I've heard from some of the Aboriginal leaders that here we are in Australia, with, side by side with the culture that's practiced exactly what you just said. The environment's looking after me, so we're going to look after it. And I think where TreeCoin comes in, and the philosophy myself and Self, the co-founder that you met just earlier, is incentivizing the broader community of people who are perhaps they're not at the front line of, like you and those sort of farming rural colleagues you mentioned who see and feel, touch the changes and have the sort of hands-on reason to do this as part of just a way of life. That's to bring in the support of the broader economy, the broader public that are much less engaged and less at the forefront, mostly urban.
Yeah.
But through the TreeCoin platform as an end-to-end sort of way to span from Joe Blow in the city to Farmer Joe in the country. It's got the ability to grow more forests.
Yeah.
And someone in the city that can directly participate in that through this sort of medium that we've got. TreeCoin's up and running as a platform. We've got growers sign up from Australia and several other countries, Africa, US, and it's pretty exciting to see the dots come up on the map, because the growers need more ways to benefit, as in to be incentivized, rewarded is the right word for what they're doing, so it can all scale up. Of course, it has to be done in a way that's continues to be trusted and doesn't kind of form a bubble at burst. But I think it's about incentivizing people on true economics, which includes that sort of personal benefit, the profit outcome, and the individual gains while the environment gains. So I guess it's those two twin pillars, I guess, of like commerce and regulation, trying to sort of form a better future for the planet. But that's a big sort of vision that we probably both share. It's the detail of how we get there.
Yeah,
in a way that is sustainable, like both environmentally sustainable, but also sort of reputationally and commercially sustainable. So what would you sort of say is key to, we're in the voluntary carbon markets, Joyce, what would you say are the key factors around integrity for people operating, both as the purchaser side, the grower side, that watching this channel?
Yeah, sure. I think back to that First Nations principle, I'll start there for a hand. Something great I was told by an elder in North Queensland was, if you look after the environment, it will always look after you. And I think, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago in Australia, we lost our way in the sense that, we have to do this for the environment. It's going to cost money. I don't have the money. I need to invest that money elsewhere in a market that I know will give me a return. And I think what's been great as Australia is, rapidly approaching its net zero targets. And we're all in on that, I hope. It's about saying, well, actually, if we do the right thing by the environment, there is an economic benefit. And if there's an economic benefit, we can scale up. Because we start looking at institutional investors that say, actually, this is a really great project. This is a really great group of people. I'm going to put some money into this and watch it grow. I'm going to get an economic return, and the environment's going to get a return too. So it's about finding that win-win. I think what the code looks at is, we don't look at the science. We look at the behavior. So we look at the behavior of market participants. And what we really preach is, for us, integrity, it's not a slogan, it's a verb. You need to be doing it, and you need to be seen to be doing it. And what we really look at in the carbon ecosystem has changed significantly. And by ecosystem, I mean players. So you have established banks, you have Farmer Joe, you have First Nations people, you have lawyers, you have accountants that are looking at projects, you have the government playing a key role. So if you think about the Clean Energy Regulator and their role in the compliance scheme, and it's about saying, well, for us, whatever we're doing and however we're doing it, it needs to be accountable and it needs to be transparent. So what the code looks at is, we can sit this podcast now, but how do we tailor this podcast so a landholder can understand what we're saying about the market? So, how can a First Nations group understand what we're saying about the market? And that's what the code really looks at. So it's about saying, we have this great deal of information. We know this information's great, but how can we tailor it so Farmer Joe can make an informed decision about what they need to do with their property? So I guess to answer your question, it is about being accountable and being transparent in your decision making.
Yeah. Just for the people watching, subscribe to the channel, and we've got a lot more of this sort of content in the history channel and also coming up. So and follow us on socials. One of the analogies we talked about earlier was the sort of health food industry or the food industry. People want to eat food that's clean and healthy, not contaminated.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of certifications and labeling that goes with that. There's also clever marketing that goes in that kind of can look like it more than it really is. So in terms of the consumer, someone maybe looking to get involved in TreeCoin wants to know, is this equivalent of genuinely healthy, organic? And we've got the signatory to the code of conduct. I mean, just bringing it down to, I think, simple terms, like you're saying, for anyone watching, what's the key things that we need to work out and keep our eye together so that the genuinely healthy food or the genuinely high integrity carbon tokens are easily discernible for people that want to know the difference?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something we ran into in 2020 with the code. We said, we're setting industry best practice, but what does that mean? And how do people know that it is, in fact, industry best practice? And so we started with that code brand mark, which TreeCoin is a signatory to. So there's that brand mark. So increasingly our landholders and our local councils are looking to work with developers and non-developers that are signatories to the code. Because what that brand mark means, so TreeCoin has that brand mark. Each year there'll be an audit, particularly of our developers, about the way in which they're undertaking projects and the way in which they're doing their projects with landholders and other stakeholders within the community. And so that's easier said than done. But now that we've done it for 5 or 6 years under that brand mark, we can actually detect themes within the market. So things that are going really well, which we celebrate as a market, and things that we may need to focus on. So, for example, we receive complaints under our code as a consumer protection tool. So, if that signatory is carrying that brand mark, a landholder can come forward and say, look, I've got a real problem with this signatory. I need assistance in resolving it. And I guess as you start building that brand within the market and that goodwill within the market, that brand means everything. So it's, I need to ensure that a landholder looks for that brand, that a government looks for that brand, and that stakeholders and investors look for that brand within the market. Yeah. And it takes the entire market to support that. Yeah. So that signatory base is immense. We have established signatories and new signatories joining all the time. And we really make sure, particularly with I call them younger signatories, or those joining the market, that they can meet the benchmark, which sits under that brand.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucially important. And we don't want consumers to be confused. So, there's brands upon brands upon brands upon brands, particularly in environmental markets. And it's about saying what robust framework sits under that brand.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's an interesting stage that we're in, as well as we're obviously got the code of conduct membership that we're proud of. We're also going to be building towards other certifications where on a global level. And part of that is documenting more about how we do what we do in publishing that transparently. A complaints and response process, like you mentioned there, it's actually kind of part of a healthy system where, complaints are a way for concerns to be heard. This is all in the how it's addressed. That is really what matters the most. So, we're in the process of that. And there'll also be an annual checkup or an audit process as a code conduct signatory. I think in the middle of each year, starting this coming year, will be our first one. So we'll be looking forward to testing our documentation to suit that process as well. And also making it transparent for all you guys, so that you get to see what it is behind, in particular the carbon benefit side of what we're doing. I mean, just for anyone listening, that's why I'm involved, is because I'm a true believer that carbon benefit outcomes are what is needed on a global scale, local scale, So, the purpose of TreeCoin is to provide a vehicle to scale that up. Doesn't mean that will be perfect, or we've got to keep improving how we do it. But at our heart, the carbon benefit outcome is right there side by side with the economic benefit. It's like they have to both be there at a really strong level. So certainly the intention is there. I probably, having said that, there'll be plenty of organizations that have similar good intentions that have nonetheless exposed in the spotlight to anti-greenwashing. And in some cases there could be weaknesses found that could mean that it was inadvertent greenwashing, in some cases intentional, but probably often unintentional.
Sure.
So I guess it's about what's the word? Critique proofing this somehow, so that it doesn't just take my word for it. The system speaks for itself.
And that's right. And that's what that audit process does, which TreeCoin will go through. So there's a suite of about 40 questions that are designed on meeting the requirements of the code. And it's not about, banishing or publicly shaming a signatory to the code. We hear from our signatories that have been part of the code for several years saying, this is great for us because our entire, relevant department or our board can sit down and do the self-assessment audit together, because it gives us a health check of how things are actually going, with that project and that landholder or that First Nations group, how things are going with our complaints handling procedure. And what it enables you to do is an iterative process over the next financial year. As a board or as an entity, you can then sit down and be like, let's implement some changes. And so it works as a really effective risk mitigation tool. And environmental markets can be inherently risky. So I think you touched on greenwashing. You can see ASIC really starting to enforce greenwashing in Australia, and it's becoming incredibly topical. We read about it in the newspapers. And I guess that's what the code seeks to do. It seeks to look after the consumer or that landholder, what we call them, as a consumer protection tool. But it really seeks to de-risk a signatory's business in the market.
Yeah, which is a really healthy process for us. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like going to the dentist. Sure, it's good for you. Don't necessarily look forward to it in the moment because it's there's a scrutiny going on.
Yeah.
But overall, doing it regularly is going to be good for you. Remember that at home, folks.
Yeah. It's a good reminder for a Friday.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to chat, and we've already said maybe early next year we'll get together again.
I think so. I'm really looking forward to see how TreeCoin goes. I think that the product you have is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow. And I think we have a heck of a lot more to discuss. No, we'll flip to it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't remember to subscribe, guys. See you later. See you next time.